Everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Attack Productions. Today, I'm Bankrupt joined again by Nick and Aaron.
Howdy, howdy.
What's up?
And today's matchup is, well, it's Nick versus Aaron. And because it is the week of our Zenkai Boost Series, Dawn of Z Legends, whatever you want to call it, we're playing newer decks. Aaron has brought us starter Trunks. Nick has brought us starter Kid Goku. So, pretty interesting matchup. Commanders buttons down below. Feel free to click me there for a reason. Let's get into today's matchup. But before we do that, because this is a new set, just want to point out there, everyone's getting familiar with the way they want to do their board. So you're going to see it like the last two videos. Guys, get into it.
What's there to get into? This is boring as shit.
I mean, blue versus yellow. What can you expect? I was really excited about set 10 Trunks. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when this was the first leader came out. So when they announced they were rebooting him, I was really excited. And so, as initially, this is the first thing that I was going to build. And so, but going against Nick's deck, the first thing that I asked him when I sat down, I was like, okay, what do I need to know? He said, do you have anything that deals with barrier? I said, I don't think so. And he said, well, you're going to have a pretty bad time then. So, and you'll see that kind of plays out over the course of the
That is 100% accurate. The way I have the starter deck Goku build is it runs more than half the deck cards are barrier cards. I mean, the big threats aren't, but they usually can last on the field long enough to where they're good. But yeah, in this case, all my wing small guys have barrier, so it's really hard for the opponent to interact with them, which is nice for me, but not for the opponent, clearly.
Yeah, as I was looking through, I mean, blue really doesn't have a ton of answers for it. Now, I did end up changing the deck just slightly and throwing in one of the 5-drop, the Super Saiyan 4 Goku unisons that just wipes the board and puts it back into your hand, ignoring barriers. So I feel like that's something. But again, that's not necessarily even a really good answer. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of digging to see what we can do. But
one of the perks about this starter deck Goku is it searches top 10 for an Earthling or a Unison, so you have a lot of consistency with your turns, especially unawakened, and it doesn't cost anything, so you don't even need to swing with the leader to do that. So your early turns are usually really fire, and then you can awaken pretty much whenever you want, since the only requirement is you have to have an Earthling on board, which, again, how are you not going to have one? It's just so much value, and it's so free. Like, a lot of times you'll see where you have to spend something to do an awaken or get an ability off, but this is all just free. It's nuts.
And not only is it free, but like there's really no even later drawback to it, like the Yamcha where you tap him and then he untaps. So it's like I can't even swing at him because he's barriers, so he's hard to deal with, and I can't attack him. The same thing with that Bulma, where you tap her to draw a card and discard a card, and then you untap her. It's just it's a lot. It's really hard to deal with. It's deceptively difficult to deal with a bunch of 1K and 4K people.
Yeah, but one of the things that I will say is it can get pretty complicated in your sequencing when choosing what to play and what to attack with. A lot of times it's usually the opposite. When you have to play against yellow, you have to sequence your turns correctly. But in this case, when you're piloting the deck, you have to be very careful on what you're tapping, what you're swinging with first, because the Yamcha will only get its full effect when it restands a Goku that hasn't swung for the turn, which is a crazy restriction, but it's kind of easy to work around. You just have to keep everything in mind while you're playing. So it's not saying it's very skill intensive, but there's just a lot of moving parts to the deck that you have to just keep track of.
Yeah, it's big brain in the sense that there's a lot of spinning plates. I really didn't even know what to do against this deck, so I to slam was that the 4-drop Goku that I put back in your hand because it's
Hey, Aaron, we're getting some form of weird feedback.
Oh.
Aaron, if you could go ahead and try to disconnect and reconnect, and Nick was trying to fill in the buffer.
Yeah, so essentially the way the turns are playing out is with my Unison, I can get free value again by just free playing Goku battle cards. Especially now that this Explosive Spirit Son Goku, which was a pretty old card, just gets more life into the deck now that it's a free pop anything arrest mode. And the Unison will also boost the card +5, so now it's going to always be a threat that you can swing with. It's just another thing that just generates so much value. And since it has barrier, it's hard to interact with.
It was really annoying to deal with. I hope that my volume is better. Sorry,
it's good now.
It was really annoying to deal with because of the +5K boost and just it seems like everything in your deck, Nick, everything worked like together really seamlessly, and it really made it to where it's like you leave your opponent. And I think that the best decks in Dragon Ball make your opponent make all of the decisions, and so like this deck has so many threats on board, has so many little support pieces that it's almost like you don't have an answer for everything outside of red, and it's a hard deck to play against.
Yeah, and going off what you said, like it's just playing like I said before, playing against yellow is usually like just one big puzzle. But when you're sitting against a board that looks like this, where you have Poutine on board, you have 2 blockers on board, you have your Unison that can be a blocker, and then have all my energy up. Like, what can you do? Like, there's just so much that yellow can do in the face of that. Like, you just have to. There's not many plays that you can make to get around this type of board state.
I was gonna ask you, what was your sideboard by any chance?
Me or Aaron?
Nick.
Me. My sideboard, I was kind of worried about Gogeta because a lot of people at the shop were thinking about playing that, and a lot of people have it built. One of the main pieces that I put was a Vegeta Unison of Fury, just as an easy way to stop him from swinging with, or stop the opponent from swinging with high cost battle cards, since yellow doesn't have removal for that card. But my sideboard was kind of mixed with things, but that was like the biggest piece. I also put in Tyrannical Blows to deal with the low cost battle cards in Unison Hate, and then I'm kind of drawing.
Because I was curious with like being able to play stuff so freely, be able to control your opponent's board on your swings on their turn with Poutines. Did you ever think about playing the 3-drop Slug as just another way of controlling your opponent because you have all the blockers to protect it?
Yeah, I was thinking about the Slug package. The only problem with that is the deck space is kind of tight. It's not really all archetypal stuff, I guess. It's just the Unison is your 4 of. You're running 4 of the Yamchas. You're running 4 of each Goku. The deck space gets pretty heavy, so it's kind of hard in that case. I mean, you could run Slug if you wanted to, because since you have a lot of stuff that has barrier with it, it's not going. Your stuff not going anywhere. I just couldn't find room for it in my build. It might be something I would look at later.
And Aaron, was this one of your hardest matchups just because of the manipulation of what his cards could do to your field?
Yeah, and that honestly, like the biggest part was all the blockers. Like blue, at least this build of it, I get 2, maybe 3 high quality swings every turn, and as I try to ramp, and so the fact that he has, I mean, just on board right now, he's got 1, 2, he's got 2 blockers. He can turn the Bulma into a blocker. That was the hardest part for me to get through, was just all these little blockers that have barrier that are really hard to get through. And that Bulma's +2, or that her plus is +2. So at turn 2, 3, 4, it's like not even worth swinging into her at that point. And so, this deck can, I was really trying to figure out, okay, I've got the Boo Unison here as some sort of removal for when he swings, but I can't go through barrier with it. And so it's just, it was a really bad matchup, just in the sense of not anything, just, it's just color wise. It's just a tough matchup for blue to go up against this much barrier.
Yeah, and normally you don't see decks with this amount of barrier-heavy cards in them.
Right.
A lot of times you'll see 1 or 2, maybe small pieces, but this is just so much. And in the play we just ran, the Goku Ape that he bottom decked with the Boo Unison, it has an effect when it leaves the board. You can free play a 4 or less cost Goku from your drop area. So essentially that Goku that's underneath it could come back, and I just didn't move it. But it's it's just crazy, just the amount of value, just explaining the cards, what they do, and like why is like this deck is just stupid. Like they just added so much to this.
Explaining cards to me, and I was like, oh, you can do that for free. Oh, that card gets to do that too. Like it was almost like, wow, like, you know, there's every one of these cards has a wall of text, and everything that they do plays so well off of the rest of the cards that are currently on board. And so, Nick, do you kind of want to explain what happens here with this line of play?
Yeah, so I don't realize it until pretty much the end of my turn. But there's the misplay with the Z Awakening. With the Z Awakened Goku leader, you have to be at 3 life, and I was at 4. So big misplay on my part. But it didn't really change much, since the crit swing doesn't really matter against this leader, since he's just going to pick it up anyway. And I also had the Frieza Army reinforcements in my hand, so I could have taken the life on his swing instead of blocked, and the board state would have essentially been the same.
Yeah, I wasn't going to combo over. Like, I knew that the Vegeta was there in my life. I was taking that life no matter what happened anyway, because I needed to ramp. And so, yeah, it's a misplay, but it doesn't even really matter. It changed nothing.
Yeah, and one of the big things, I talked about it in my last game, with this deck in particular, is comboing's kind of weird. As you can see, I have my super combos charged in my Z energy, but more often than not, I don't see myself comboing defensively or offensively, just because the defense is so high with the blockers that there's almost no reason to combo in most scenarios. So I'm still figuring out the best times to charge Z energy and combo and things like that. But most of the time, the stuff is pretty cheap. I think the most I'm spending on a Z battle card or the leader is just 2. So you don't have to go too heavy on the Z deck, but charging is kind of...
Yeah, that was another part about with this Trunks build that made it tough, is that the Z deck for blue is pretty intense. Like that Vegito is 5, and it's so telegraphed. Like, you know it's coming, because I've got 5 energy in my Z energy, and it's like, well, you know, and I've got, you know, so, or I've got 5 open energy and I've got 3 Z energy. Like, you know, he's coming out, and so it just makes it tough. Here, this was a pretty rough play for me. I played this 5-drop Vegito, and I have the 8-drop in hand, and I just, like, there's so much happening on the other side of the board. I just didn't think about Poutine. And so as soon as I play it, Poutine taps. And so there's a 5-drop Vegito from set 10 that has Deflect and Barrier that immediately replaced this Soaring Blows the minute this game ended. And I'm running like a 3-1 split just to have some of the removal if there isn't any sort of counterplay that I know that I'm going up against. But I mean, I played against Turtle School in round 1, and I got Charismatic Villain. I played against something else in round 2. I played against Red in round 2, and I just got, you know, Yamcha'd and then Wolf Fang. So like, it's just so susceptible to being countered. It's impossible to use it to rely on getting the 8-drop out. So I did switch those out. So I think that will help with the consistency here. But at this point, I'm kind of on the back. I'm just kind of on the back foot here. This cell, I thought, you know, like in my game against Turtle School, I picked up like 5 cards with it, and just like, you know, not only board wiped, but got the triple strike and all the big stuff. It just does nothing here. I pick up literally nothing, which was really deflating.
You ever seen a board where 5 cards all have barrier on them?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it's, God, like I keep saying like it's crazy, but it legitimately is. Like, I've never seen decks. I mean, there's decks that free play, and there's decks that go wide, but never seen it in a scenario like this where you have pressure offensively and you have defensive power with blockers. It's like the perfect storm of offense and defense.
It is a little bit more oppressive than even a Trunks Cheetah. Like, you know, Trunks Cheetah wants to do the same thing. It wants to put a lot of barrier out, but the Vegeta doesn't have barrier, and that's like your main means of offense until you go up the chain. And so I would say this is like another step even above that. Apart from the control that the 3-drop Trunks gives you, you have just as much of that with Explosive Spirit and all of the blockers. I think it's almost, I would say it's even more defensive than Trunks Cheetah is, if that's even possible.
Yeah, and if I wanted to, I could go into the hard negates. And here's another small little misplay that we noticed as well. He negated with the Dimension Magic, and then I countered with the Cooler. There should have been an energy tap at that point, or a spark to take the life. But it was just a easy miss, just because we played it so quickly.
Yeah, just never used to not untapping 2 energy there.
I will also say, I think I didn't mention it at the beginning of the video, but when I was trying to find who to put on the third round, I was trying to figure out what deck hadn't been on yet, and almost any combination I did, it seemed like some deck is repeating itself, and Fluff didn't really want to be on camera, so I was like, Nick, and you're like, oh man, this deck takes too much thinking to do.
It really does. Just because I have so many lines of play. Even with the Cooler, I was able to tap 3/4, but it's turn 6. Any deck like that late in the game can do so much. I have evolved targets I can go into. I can use my Z Awaken again. I can play Z Battle cards. I can free play stuff. There's a lot to think about. Going this late in the game, especially when both our live totals are pretty heavy. We're both sitting at 3. It's essentially anyone's game at this point.
And Aaron didn't use all that energy, so it didn't really make a difference in that moment.
Yeah. As much on the back burner as I felt offensively here, I still felt pretty good defensively. I still feel I've got the Boo to block for. I've got. I think I played all 4 Sensu Beans in this game. And Nick kept, every time I played one, Nick was like, good Lord, I hit every bean in this game. I think, you see me row. That was a really hard charge for me this turn with the blocker negate, because I figured, okay, we're coming down to the last, it's got to be the last 2 turns, I'm going to get maybe 2 more turns, if that. And so trying to figure out a way here to try to make something happen. And so, I knew I was going to get blocked here. I'm really digging here to try to pull something out. And I think I either end up just passing with a bunch of open energy on my the next turn. This happens, and I don't know. I like this card, but I was really reluctant to play it because I knew it was just going to get shut down. Especially into yellow, it just doesn't feel good.
I will say he was tapped out. He had no blockers, so he either had to use a negate blocker or happen to have a Release of Evil in hand just to stop the card swing. Because I don't know how many cards you have right now, Nick, but I feel like of all your plays, does your hand get really big in this deck?
It can. There's a lot of ways to draw. The leader will draw you a card. The Yamcha, if it does its effect, it'll draw you a card. The Goku Ape that you evolve in will draw and evolve. There's a pretty good amount of ways to draw. It's not ridiculous, you're drawing 4, 5, 6 cards a turn, but you're still getting it. Your hand's pretty healthy. But one thing that was pretty frustrating that I will spoil a little bit. I had the Seeker Rare in hand, but there was almost never a point where he had 5 tapped because he's playing blue. So there was a lot of times where I wanted to get stuff in, essentially. And you can even see trying to swing with the Yamcha. I just wanted to make sure I get stuff to go through. But yeah, playing against blue defense, when it's blues on the defense is hard, just because they shut down they just shut down swings. Just hard negating stuff is rough.
Yeah, again, being every single turn against this deck is rough. And then this was a clutch. I sided this in every game, and then I ended up mainboarding it. This Goku is so good. Honestly, when I finally drew it, it was the first time in the entire game where I thought, okay, I actually have a chance. So here comes the secret rare. And then I think, do you play the Oolong here? Yeah.
Yeah, because Oolong would just steal the battle power from the Seeker, so now I have 2 40k swings. One going at the Goku, of course, and then one going at lead.
I was hoping you would swing with the secret rare first, so that I could bottom deck the oolong, and then and then there would be nothing left. But it didn't work out that way. But I did survive that one at least.
The secret doesn't have barrier, does it?
No,
it does not.
You could have -1 on Boo for the secret rare.
I could have, but then but I did not want to lose Boo, but for any means, and he has open energy, and so I figured, well, if I don't, I was going to get rid of it next turn anyway. You'll see that I get rid of it using Trunks' leader ability. I'll just bottom deck it, and I knew I was going to be doing that because I wanted to apply pressure with the double strike, and so because I have the Vegito out, I was like, well, I'm going to be tapping 2 for this Trunks anyway to get the double strike. I'll just bottom deck it and have it be done with.
But Final Flash saves the day.
Yep.
Yeah. So with that being said, thank you for the opportunity, and keep minus buttons down below and comments and whatnot. And Nick, let us out.
Yeah, Aaron, it was a good match. It's always good to see you out. We had a lot of fun playing the new stuff, so you'll get to see more of it in the future. Read your cards, know your plays, let us make the mistakes so you don't have to, and fluff out.